Hi, I am Daniel, and the Tom and Jerry live action movie first released in February in both cinemas and HBO Max, neither of which were currently available in the UK then. In March it was available to rent online, but considering it was released later in your other countries, and the high price, I decided to wait till DVD's release, even though this video won't get much views likely. If anything, it fits because the 5th initial impression movie on was a yay review. Anyway, this film was meant to release late 2020, but moved to early 2021, which isn't much compared to other lockdown years. By the trailers, I was looking forward to this, because it looked like it respected the original more than other live-action cartoon adaptation hybrids, and the animation looked unique. It was a shock because I was expecting it to be part of the Hanna-Barbera cinematic universe, which Scoob started, but now I highly doubt it because it's in a completely different medium, which I guess is a good thing. However, when the reviews came out and it was negatively received, I lowered my expectations a bit. The story is set in a hotel featuring Tom and Jerry and new characters. I'll talk about the Tom and Jerry parts first, which is what you would expect from them in a hotel. They fight and eventually work together after 2/3 of the movie. I think choosing this direction was the best way to go, but at the same time, if it went for the live action, this wouldn't stand out at all from other Tom and Jerry movies. The parts with the humans take up as much, if not more, screen time than the Tom and Jerry parts. This seemed to ruin the film for most people from what I can tell, and I am mixed on it. On one hand, having the full or even most of the runtime be Tom and Jerry would be bad because it would get old quick, which is why I wouldn't call myself a fan of the franchise as a whole, and the live action bits sound awful. However, it feels like two completely different movies smushed into one mess of a mashup with very small links. For example, the line "if Tom and Jerry can get along, we can" is so forced. Speaking of, despite being advertising, Tom and Jerry aren't friends for young, which is bad because those bits are the best part of the film. The movie is paced relatively well for not being too young or too short. The film's animations and visuals look good for having a 2.5D style because it's CGI that replicates the original style, and it also seems to move well. The ending with live action is hit or miss, because in some shots it works, in others it doesn't, especially when they're trying to stand. It's supposed to be replicating stuff like Who Framed Roger Rabbit and Space Jam, which makes me wonder why it wasn't full 2D, because there is a bigger difference between 2D and live action, which really makes it look better. It's obviously because 2D isn't mainstream enough, but still. The immersion is weak, but for the type of film it isn't needed, and some character angles look weird, because these designs weren't designed to do stuff like this. The comedy is average, for having some pretty good jokes, but most aren't funny. It doesn't use slapstick as the main source of comedy, which I think is a good thing, because I'm not a big fan of that type of comedy, and it would have got off for a whole movie. While not as prevalent as other modern kids' films, but this tries to be cool in some areas, especially them pigeons who I hate for being really annoying and they start the film off. Discussing the characters, Tom and Jerry are presented well at adapting to a new setting despite not being introduced to new viewers. The main human girl, whose name I can't remember, is unlikable, and the character hard to root for, but she's at least interesting, which is better than most live-action animation hybrid adaptations like this, with very boring human character celebrity placeholders. The other people working in the hotel, like Trev and the manager, are good enough for the smaller roles they are. The characters are fine overall, but nothing better than that. In conclusion, I give this film a 7 out of 10, and a Depends recommendation. I was close to giving it a 6, but I generously gave it 7. I only recommend it to fans of Tom and Jerry and them live action adaptations, despite it being better. I would also wait because it's not worth money. I enjoyed this more than popular opinion, but I won't defend the Yike with Sponge on the Run. It goes 7th place on the ranking, where 4 or 5 of the films are animated TV show related, depending on whether you count I Alligator Boy because it started the show. After this video, I'm going to stop ranking the initial impressions because I want to make the individual ones more standalone. The end.